At a schedule that is being departed from right now. Oh, that's good. Shut it down. I would like to, we're going to probably have, for whatever time we've got left, I got a good friend of mine who's a lawyer here in Austin. His name is Bob Bernhoft. And he's one of these decrepit lawyers, the scum of the earth, that believes in the United States Constitution. You know, if you believe in the United States Constitution, you are, send them to the slaughters. Well, anyway, Bob's right here. He's going to come up and he's got all sorts of very interesting war stories, and I presume that he's going to tell us a war story right now. But, the one thing I do know about him, he really loves to shovel snow. So, here's Bob Bernhoft.
I don't have to shovel snow anymore. As some of you know, I was born and bred in upper Midwest, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I've had my little law firm up there for about 12, 13 years. I was an older law student, had many careers before that. And just 2 years ago or so, my wife and I decided that it was time to make a change. I had done a bunch of cases in Austin, Texas. And we, for some reason, I just felt moved to do it. So we pulled the trigger, shut down everything up there, and moved with our key people, family. So Austin is now my national headquarters. We have a little shop in Los Angeles, but this is where we live and work now, and it's good to be down here. It really is. I've always been impressed with the independent ferocity, the sort of independent spirit of Texas. Always been intrigued by it, enjoyed my time down here, and now I get to be a part of it. Of course, in Austin, we're looked down upon, at least until you've been there about 4 or 5 years. So I'm still, I've had, I was talking to Larry about this. I've been wearing Larry Mahan boots since I was 16 years old. And then I gave them up for a little bit. I don't know why, so now I get to go to Lucchese and get some Lucchese boots, and I'm excited about that. I wanted to thank Steve Hempfling from Free Enterprise Society for letting me make a few comments up here, and of course, Larry Haycraft. Some of you may know Larry and I did the Vernice Coogan case in 2003 in Memphis, Tennessee, and Larry's the finest trial attorney I've ever worked with. Committed, disciplined, and very effective. A couple things that I'm interested in these days. We do a lot of federal criminal tax representation, not just trial work, but we also represent people who are targeted by administrative criminal investigations and grand jury investigations. We also do a good bit of civil tax audit collection, and we're looking for leverage to obtain outcomes for our clients. And one of the things that we've used a lot lately is a hybrided version of Freedom of Information Act requests, FOIA requests, particularly during criminal investigations. And contrary to some conventional misunderstanding, you can obtain a good bit of information even during the pendency of a criminal investigation through FOIA. And so we've been doing a lot of that work. The other thing that I've been interested in lately is government misconduct. And I had the privilege of appearing with Joe Bannister on Alex Jones's show in October, and we talked a little bit about this. What we're seeing over the past 10 years, now this sort of misconduct, whether it's subornation of perjury, discovery violations, all manner of categories of that sort of misconduct, it's always been focused, it's been typically focused in what we call disfavored litigants. In other words, the system takes a look at it and says, well, we got those doggone tax protesters. Now the Attorney General says it's tax defiers. They change the name once in a while. We can go after them, and we can break the rules. But we won't break the rules outside of that little narrow, nobody likes tax protesters, right? Nobody likes people that don't file returns and pay tax. So we'll be able to break the rules regarding that small subset of people, and it'll never bleed out to anything else. And that turns out to be false. And of course, that's a logical fallacy to suggest that you can take and have different sets of rules for certain types of people, and that the breaking of the rules and that pattern is not going to bleed out across all spectrum of society. And it has, in fact. And that's what's wrong with that sort of an idea, that you can break the rules, get away with it because you don't particularly like this little class of people. It also happens to be a bill of attainder problem. To identify a certain class of individual by belief or any other attribute and treat them differently under what's supposed to be the same set of laws, that's a due process violation, and that's a bill of attainder, and to some extent an ex post facto problem. So we do a lot of trial work, and I wanted to talk briefly. I'm not going to talk for long. I'm going to turn this back over to Larry. Larry's got some great stuff that he's working with on the big board here. But I want people to be thinking about talking to friends and neighbors and people in their community, not just about beliefs about tax. We really do have to reach people about the transcendent principles. What this should be about, I think what it is about for most of us, if not all of us, is restoring ordered liberty and freedom in America. That's the fundamental proposition. And there's lots of ways to do that. And I encourage everybody to reach out across the aisle to people of different political stripes and persuasions. Make common cause with people on an issue that you both share. Doesn't matter whether they're Democrats or Republicans or Libertarians or Communist Worker Socialist Union Party. You got to reach across the aisle and find common ground, and there is common ground out there. One of the things that encourages me greatly is the young people right now, the extent to which they have gravitated to Dr. Ron Paul's message. That is a hope for all of us. So people that say that the American people are tuned out, they're not interested in complex ideas about fiat currency, and Tom Selges is here, and they're not interested in these things, and they don't want to pay attention. Well, I submit to you that the huge body of young people that have gravitated to Dr. Paul's message of sanity, economic sanity, and truth should give us all hope. And we have to start encouraging more of that, and not disdaining other people who may have seized upon a different issue that we don't feel is so important. There's a lot of heads to the tentacular beast out there, and we all pick one or two, hopefully, that we can make a difference in. So this government misconduct issue is an important deal, and what we've been doing through FOIA in criminal cases is obtaining evidence of discovery violations, subornation of perjury, and a whole manner of other misconduct. And recently we were really happy. It's a wonderful family out of Atlanta, Georgia, the Marshalletta family, and I'm not going to get into the details of the case,
Yes,
but
you are.
should I? Oh, geez.
You're directed.
All right. My lawyer told me to do something. I better listen. All right, I'll give you a synopsis of this case, and this is what's one of the things that's wrong when, and I'll tell you something, there's plenty of good government servants out there. We need high quality men and women in government service. There's bad people out there that need to be investigated and disciplined for fraud and all violence and all manner of things. And we don't want ourselves broad brushed as people who don't believe in discipline, law, and order, because I do. Now, I'm a libertarian. All right, I believe in individual rights and liberty, but I also believe in objective morality. And I believe that we have to have a disciplined society. And many times we're all broad brushed as being some sort of anarchists, because some of us have unconventional beliefs regarding the scope and nature of tax. And we have to resist that. And we have to talk to people about other issues as well. The Marshalletta case is an object example of what's wrong with how the federal special agents are trained, how our United States attorneys and the assistant U.S. attorneys are trained, and how DOJ tax division runs their shop.
Nazis.
I'm sorry?
Nazis.
Well, it's become so personal and unhinged from rule of law or due process principles. It's an abomination. So you have a female special agent down in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 1999, Patricia L. Bergstrom. And she sees this circle company start growing and building a lot of they hang rock. Everybody know what rock hanging is? Drywall? It's called rock hanging. They're a big drywall company. And Jerry's broke. He moves down with his family from New York City. Yes, his last name has an extra vowel back there. He is Italian. And so he moves down there and he starts his company from scratch. They have nothing. And he gets a rock contract to build the Olympics. And he assists in building the Olympic Village. He becomes successful. And he's not a non-filer. Jerry Marshalletta files his tax returns and pays tax. And by our account, he's paid a whole bunch of tax over the past 12 years, supporting sub-clans somewhere in the world. I don't know where. But it's a lot of tax. But he was Italian. He was from New York City. And he liked to wear a nice suit every once in a while. That apparently made him John Gotti Jr. And Special Agent Bergstrom set about with a persecution that's hard to grasp the scope of it. Starts in 1999. She believes he's some mafiosi from New York. She starts investigating him for money laundering and currency transaction report violations. She commits fraud and causes a seizure of some checks in the FedEx terminal in Memphis, Tennessee to be seized, uses that as a pretext to start an organized crime LCN investigation. And this goes on for 12 years. Jerry Marshalletta Jr., my lead client, is, as I was mentioning over lunch, has to be the most investigative man in the world. And I'll get back to that. So the Marshallettas, what do? You know, they're law-abiding people. They talk to some of their business lawyers, guys that do contracts for them, and they hire the best former prosecutors, you know, they can get in Atlanta. And the lawyers laughing. I mean, this is what rational people do, right? You know, I'm filing my returns, I'm paying tax. I talked to my business lawyer. He says, oh, there's these guys over here at this white shoe silk stocking firm over there, and they've got a couple of former prosecutors. They're going to give you a great defense. So this goes into 2002. They have to hire criminal tax counsel, and they do. Former prosecutors from Atlanta, Georgia, the best in the business down there. Well, they immediately start to sense that something's wrong. So the investigation goes on and on and on. Ultimately, in 2007, in March, they're indicted by a federal grand jury. Their lawyers tell them it's a slam dunk, they didn't do anything wrong, they're innocent, they're going to be acquitted by the jury. And how lawyers can tell clients that, given the jury system we have, I don't know, but that's what they were told. And they were confident, they didn't know about the system, they were confident that they were going to be acquitted. Well, they went to trial and they were convicted in September 2007. I was lead trial counsel for Wesley Snipes in the case down in Florida in 2008. We'd gotten the jury verdict February 1st, 2008, and they were looking for help because they were facing sentencing. And so they called me up. The father, Mr. Marshalletta, called me up, and his daughter called me. They were very worried about their family, of course, because Jerry Jr. was facing 7-8 years in federal prison, and the father, who was in his early 70s at the time, is facing 5 or 6 years in prison. So we were engaged for a sentencing consult and appeal. So the first thing we did is we consulted with the local lawyers on sentencing, and we got them a bail pending appeal. The judge had made a crucial reliance on accountant or tax advisor jury instruction mistake, crucially important. That's a conventional mistake. Judges can make those mistakes. So we had a great appeal issue, and the judge had integrity, and he let them out on their own recognizance pending the appeal, so at least their business wouldn't be destroyed and their family wouldn't be destroyed. Then we started reading the trial transcripts, getting ready for what we call the merits appeal. We're going to appeal these convictions to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. And my team and I started seeing what we call indicia of misconduct. We looked at the discovery, 15,000 pages of discovery in a massive client tax conspiracy, evasion, false subscription case that was going on for 12 years. That's just not possible. And then we saw evidence that there was subornation of perjury. When you read a trial transcript, and you read a lot of them, you can get a pretty good whiff when a witness is lying.
Here in America?
Here in America. The trial was so bad. And then the government prosecutors, there was an older Italian man who worked as a rock man for Jerry. And he was a first-generation immigrant. He had a very thick Italian accent. The prosecutor, Justin Anand, actually approached him on a direct examination and asked him a couple questions, and everybody could hear he had a thick, he was in his late 70s. He had a thick Italian accent. And he says, where are you from? You know, are you Italian? And he said, I am an American. I'm an American citizen. That's the sort of crap these prosecutors started right off with the jury, as if these were some sort of mobsters because they had an Italian immigrant who was working hanging rock for them. And it got worse. They savaged them with talk of mansions that didn't exist. It was the most unprofessional misconduct opening statement I've ever seen. And not one objection from the defense attorneys. Not one. So the trial rolled out. The government also pulled out a confidential informant, and increasingly this is also used in all manner of cases, not just criminal tax. And you could read that trial transcript and know this guy was lying. That Sean McBride, that confidential informant who's no longer very confidential, because I know his name, because we investigated him, he was actually a controlled, paid FBI informant, managed and controlled by Atlanta-based FBI Special Agent Mark Sewell. And they lied to the court about that. They lied to the defense lawyers, and that did not reveal that he was a paid, confidential, controlled informant. So he's going to say anything they want him to up there. And he did. He lied about babysitting Jerry and Sandy Marshalletta's kids. Sandy told me later, I met that buffoon once, and I wouldn't have that oaf babysit my children in a million years. This is a solid family. So it just went from bad to worse. Closing argument was a nightmare. So we read this, and so I went to the Marshallettas and I said, you should authorize me to do a misconduct investigation because I think you had massive discovery violations and there's something going on behind this case. There's no way this case just springs out of nowhere as a criminal tax case. There's something behind here. There's a story behind the story. Now I'll compress the story a little bit. So we started investigating. We had an investigator and us conducted interviews. We tracked down all of the witnesses and re-interviewed them, and lo and behold, the stuff that was in the memorandas of interview that the government, the IRS special agent put down was never said. There was loads of exculpatory statements made to the government that have to be revealed to the defense that was not. This wasn't an unfair trial. This was a fraud of epic proportion. So when they say, well, we can go after the non-filers, but we won't break the rules regarding anybody else. That's a bald-faced lie. Every American should know that this can happen to them. Because if it can happen to the Marshallettas down in Atlanta, it can happen to them. That's a message we can talk to people about. Just because people don't agree with an unconventional view regarding the scope and nature of tax does not mean that they should not be concerned what's going on in the federal agent, special agent cadre, with our government in Washington, D.C., with DOJ Tax Division, and with the U.S. Attorney's offices, because they should be. They better be concerned if they care about themselves, their children, and their future. So we did a bunch of Freedom of Information Act requests, and lo and behold, again, Jerry Marshalletta is the most investigated man in the world. There was an execution of a search warrant on an alleged co-conspirator that was not revealed to the defense prior to trial in violation of the statutes and Constitution and laws of the United States, as Larry knows, and other people know in here. There were 17 federal agencies that participated in that raid. 17. Now, I'm pretty good at my alphabet soup, my alphabet soup directory, the acronyms. 5 or 6 of them, I didn't even know what they were, including FOSI, which we learned was the Office of Air Force Special Investigations. No kidding. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations, FOSI. They had everybody there. I mean, you'd have thought they were going after Osama bin Laden. Oh, and by the way, the confidential informant, to gin up the investigation and make more money, he actually told the government and the special agents that Jerry knew Osama bin Laden personally and was affiliated with the Osama bin Laden construction company. I'm not kidding you. Now, if you're a special agent, hey, Joe, what do you think about that? If somebody came up to you and said, hey, this guy, he's a personal friend of Osama bin Laden, I mean, what would you think about that? The guy's nuts.
Slightly not believable.
Slightly incredible, right? Oh, no. They put it in their Form 9131, Joe. Put it right in there. Right in the 9131. So Jerry Marshalletta was a bad man. So we started figuring out what was going on, and she used the what we call the Italian ethnic prejudice whispering campaign. She told everybody and anybody that she talked to in the FBI, at the U.S. Attorney's Office, at DOJ Tax Division, that these were LCN, La Cosa Nostra, organized crime people. And that's how she kept all these people interested in what she was doing. So we started to find this all out through FOIA, because the government wouldn't give us any more documents than were produced before trial and discovery. And so we FOIA'd all of these agencies, and the hundreds of thousands of pages started to pile in, without exaggeration. Hundreds of thousands of pages that told the true story of the fraud that Special Agent Bergstrom had perpetrated. I'm going to fast forward to the appeal. I argued the appeal at the 11th Circuit in Atlanta for them August 18th, 2010. It was a very good oral argument. And this doesn't happen for lawyers who are representing controversial causes. I get abuse from the judges, I mean, you're doing pretty well when one of the judges on the 3-judge panel interrupts the government lawyer who tried the case. 15 seconds into the government's lawyer's presentation on appeal, he interrupts him and he says, Mr. Anand, before you get going, hold on one second. I just want to let you know that my colleagues and I, we're deeply troubled by your case. Now continue. You're doing pretty good, and we're like, what happened here? And then after a couple more minutes, he interrupts him. He goes, Mr. Anand, I got a question for you. We going to put people in federal prison for this? Really? So, it was one of those. They smelled it. So, there's good people and bad people in all walks of life. I've been in front of extremely good federal judges, and I've been in front of horrible federal judges who disgrace the office. But there's a spectrum, as there is in life. These were some pretty good judges up there on that panel, and they'd sniffed a rat. even though we couldn't raise any of this misconduct stuff on appeal. You have to go on the record. We just went after the jury instruction and the government misconduct in opening statement and closing argument, which we argued aggressively. So we got the decision. The first decision came down, actually I argued in 2009, in August of 2009. August of 2010, the panel came in and reversed all of the counts of conviction, save one, the count 1 Klein tax conspiracy. So although it was great to get all those counts reversed, but with the count 1 Klein conspiracy still remaining unreversed, they faced their sentencing risk. They still had the same sentencing exposure as if none of the counts had been reversed. It was a good day, but it was not a great day by any stretch. So we filed a petition for panel rehearing to try and compel that 3-judge panel to reconsider whether the failures that we documented in the original appeal also required reversal of that last remaining count. They don't grant many of them. They granted this one. They ordered additional briefing, and on December 22nd of 2010, they reversed the last count. So now the slate was wiped clean. The Marshallettas were not facing any sentencing risk whatsoever, and I got to call Jerry Joyce and his father when they were having their company Christmas party on the 22nd. I need that soda, excuse me. Thank you. So that was a good day. So we figured, I had some guys working with me, investigators on the case, and we figured there's no way the government's going to retry, because they get to retry those counts, right? Notwithstanding the fact that the 11th Circuit wipes the slate clean, the government gets an opportunity to decide whether they're going to retry. And with all the dirt that we had documented in court, including a 1,500-page motion to dismiss for misconduct, the evidence, we took all the documents we got from FOIA, and we said, this is where Special Agent Bergstrom committed perjury, highlighted it. I mean, 1,500 pages of exhibits and filings. We figured there was no way the government's going to retry, but they did, and they announced their intention to retry them on the entire case again. And this shows how careerism and advancement and ego and narcissism are running the show and calling the shots in many of these situations. We were shocked. So we figured, well, we'll blow the thing up and we'll file another motion to dismiss for government misconduct, because we were learning every month we would get more of these FOIA disclosures and putting the picture together. And so we did, we filed one. So the government comes to me and says, well, and by the way, the Marshallettas have authorized me to talk publicly about every intimate detail about this case, so you're aware. They want people to know what's going on. So the government came to me and said, well, we won't retry it. If they all plead to a top count felony, and Jerry does 18 months, so old man does 6 months, and the bookkeeper gets probation. And my clients weren't going to do that, so I said, no, that's not going to work. Then we filed our motion to dismiss. Government comes back 3-4 months later. Well, we've given it some consideration, and if they all do a top count felony, then we'll give them probation. I said, no, we're not interested in that. You guys want to retry the case, we're ready for you, and we're going to go for an evidentiary hearing on misconduct, try and get this case dismissed. And this goes back and forth. I finally had a meeting with the entire command staff of the U.S. Attorney's Office, Northern District of Georgia, and they sent a DOJ tax division lawyer down there to monitor them because they had a bad whiff, because I called some people at DOJ. Christopher Maeda, you might have bumped into him, Larry. And then things started to turn a little bit. So then they came in and said, okay, fine. We'll plead them all out to misdemeanors. We'll give you misdemeanors if you don't expose all this and file that last motion you're going to file. And everybody gets probation. Misdemeanors and probation. Now, most criminal defense attorneys, that's a doggone good deal, because they risk going 6-7 years in federal prison. That's not a joke. And the old man would have probably died in federal prison at that rate. My clients rejected it. So we filed our last motion to dismiss for government misconduct. I argued it in August. And September 10th, we had a final hearing, and ultimately the judge dismissed all the charges against Jerry with prejudice. The old man, just to fall on the sword, took a misdemeanor and no sentence. The father took a misdemeanor, paid a $25 fine as he walked out of court, and no probation, no supervised release. But Jerry was dismissed with prejudice and walked out of court a free man. So that's why I wanted to wind it up with that. It's important that we talk to people about the things that are going on out there, and not just talking about the principal issue that we may care about, connecting with people out in the community and getting them to be interested in good government, accountable, transparent government. And there's ways that we all can do that. Yes, sir.
Bob, glad to have you in Austin now, where unfortunately the judges are not good. But do we have a website for the Marshall case and others like it?
Yeah, we've been mad busy. It took so much time out of us over the past couple of years on that case. We devoted everything we had to it. There's some reference on my website to the Marshall case. We're putting up all the filings, all the documents, the transcript of my most recent oral argument in August. Give me 2 or 3 weeks. The website for the firm is bernhoftlaw.com. Sure, it's BERNHOFT law.com, all lowercase. So bernhoftlaw.com. And you go to our website. We're over on 12th in Colorado, and we'll talk to anybody about any problems they got. You got an issue you want to talk about, you just give a call over to the office. Bethany will answer the phone. She'll set it up and be happy to talk to anybody. Yes, sir.
And have you joined the Federalist Society? We have a very strong chapter here of like-minded lawyers.
You know, I used to be a student member of the Federal Society in law school, but it's good. I was talking to Steve, and I've lost track of all my newsletters, like Franklin Sanders, The Money Changer, FES. So we're going to be resubscribing, and I'll take you up on the Federal Society membership because I'm very sympathetic to that type of legal analysis and judicial thinking.
Well, in particular, our local chapter is very strong.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Silly question, but is there any chance of bringing a lawsuit against Bergstrom for misconduct and perjury and all that?
Great question. Real quick answer. The Marshalletta's got justice, but it wasn't perfect justice. And everybody's chafing about this. Should be a great day. Jerry walks out of a court of free man, but they were required to waive any federal civil rights cause of action in the bargain. And that was part of the deal where the judge dismissed all the charges with prejudice against Jerry. And without that, he's a construction guy, so he's got to get bonding and insurance. Even a misdemeanor destroys his business. So they were forced to make very, very difficult, and believe me, we had a wampum federal civil rights suit. But I understand from certain people I've spoken to in government that all will not be well with Special Agent Bergstrom.
What about a criminal complaint?
Yeah, we've waived all of our causes of action on that, but I understand that TIGTA is doing its own investigation, Treasury Inspector for Tax Administration. It's not perfect justice, folks. It's hard to come by. And but these people...
But anybody can file a criminal complaint.
Well, that's true. So in several weeks, you know, when everything goes up on the website, if some right-thinking individuals want to pursue a course of action, who am I to say? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.